Welcome back to The Heat. Saudi Arabia will allow girls to participate in physical education for the first time ever. The Ministry of Education issued the decree for this coming academic year, allowing girls to participate in physical education as part of a larger government undertaking called Vision 2030, which aims to reduce Saudi Arabia's dependence on oil and includes economic and social reforms. That's one snapshot of what's happening in the kingdom. Let's get back to our panel. Before the break, Fatimah here was talking about the guardianship model in Saudi Arabia, and I want to get the voice from Saudi Arabia in Jeddah, Maha Akeel. You know, a lot of foreigners find this guardianship system very, very difficult. The fact that women need permission from a male relative, it could even be a son in the case of divorce, to do a lot of things in Saudi Arabia. Is that at the root of problems with women's rights?
Yes, personally, I do believe that the guardianship system is the main obstacle for women and women empowerment in Saudi Arabia, and it does need a complete overhaul and probably abolishing the whole guardianship system and looking at it from really applying it the way it's meant to be within Sharia, the way Islam meant it to be for women, as it is applied in many other Muslim countries. So yes, the guardianship system is an obstacle, and I think the recent decisions made by the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman, to lift this the requirement for the consent of a guardian for women to work and to study and for medical care and everything else is a step in the right direction. And I think it needs to be looked into even more in terms of on other aspects as well for women.
Fatin, what aspects of the guardianship rule would you like changed? And do you feel it's time to abolish it directly, or is this going to be phased out over time, do you think?
I think it needs a bold decision, like a lot of things that have taken bold decisions to make them happen. So I think it needs to be abolished totally, because it is handicapping the society. But regarding the guardianship system, I want to just emphasize and highlight the fact that Saudi Arabia as a geopolitical nation differs from region to region. And so even though the guardianship system exists, the bulk of Saudi women are actually very productive in their communities, in their societies, and in their nation. And so it depends, it's very cultural. I go back to that cultural point I mentioned earlier. So depending from where you come from, you know, you are controlled by that guardianship system. And depending on the mindset of the family, that's how it's controlled. You know, so it's a big deal. I agree, we need to be, you know, without it, but at the same time, it's not handicapping the whole country, as some of these isolated cases in the media that come out, such as the case of Moudi, for example. Moudi today is living happily in the United States. It was a family affair. If the country intervened with the other lady who was caught in the Philippines, it's because it was a family affair. Sometimes, so long as a crime has not been committed, the government usually, or the leadership, lets the family deal with their personal issues. It's a very patriarchal, cultural mindset that we have. And I think once we're off with this system, then the people will accept it. Just like for entertainment. Now, entertainment is taking place all over.
I'm sorry, Fatina, I wanted to interrupt. You mentioned Moudi's situation, so I have to ask the question. Moudi, do you mind sharing a little bit of your situation here and why you're seeking asylum?
Yeah, well, first of all, it has nothing to do with family affair or individual cases. It's a law. It has nothing to do with me personally or other people personally. It's the law. What makes the family has this power is because the legal system support the patriarchy, the extreme patriarchy in Saudi Arabia. We shouldn't even have these laws that give the family this power. It has nothing to do. Even if we have a law that would apply for everybody, the basic human rights, either my family are conservative or liberals. It doesn't have to interfere. The country should not control how the family should deal together. It has nothing to do with individual cases.
So Moudi, so sorry to interrupt. How has that affected your situation? Talk to us about your situation and why that applies.
Yeah, because I believe that even being privileged from a good family that would let me study or do whatever I want, that doesn't mean that there are other people that can have the same opportunity. This is why I believe the law should apply for everybody, not because a minority in privilege can do whatever they want. This is where the law comes. It has nothing to do with family affair or personal stories. It's because the law gives this power to the family, and it shouldn't be like that.
Fatimah, you want to pick up on that?
I just want to, and just to kind of close the loop on this discussion, because I know you wanted to move on to potentially physical education, but I'd like to kind of converge a little bit of what Fatin and Moudi had mentioned and build on it. So I think we need to, for assessing Saudi society, I think we need to, again, take a step back and kind of separate some dynamics. So there are cultural norms, there's social pressure, there's religion, and then there's government. And I think these dynamics interplay, but at the grassroots organic level, my opinion, which varies slightly from Moudi's, is that the spectrum on the ground in terms of conservatism all the way to liberal varies significantly, and that impacts a Saudi woman's life on a day-to-day basis. That's the reality.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to, as you said, physical education, because, again, a lot of people will find this surprising that girls for the first time allowed to take part in physical education. Maha, in Jeddah, is this a significant reform, and is this a sign of things to come going forward?
Yes, in a way, but let's not forget that women have participated and have been involved in sports for years now. We've had women's sports clubs since 10 years ago. Women have participated in the Olympic Games in 2012 and just recently. So the fact that women are in sports, it's been here for years. The fact that now it is being introduced and allowed in public schools is a good step. Of course, it's something that is needed. It's good just in terms of rights and equal rights for women to participate in sports. It's good for her health. It's good for society. So yes, it's another example of change in the society. It's another example of how the society has moved forward in this. Before there were rejection and not accepting of this idea of women having physical education in school, but now it is a fact and it is accepted. So the fact is that some decisions has to be made from the top down, and this is one of them. And as we saw, once it is it becomes a fact and a law and approved by the government, then the society follows through and accepts it.
Last word, Fatimah. So we start off with the video. We shouldn't worry about the reaction to these videos. You say we shouldn't even worry about the driving issue. What should we be looking at to see the progress of reform when it comes to women's rights in Saudi Arabia?
So I would actually just encourage a more comprehensive assessment of Saudi society as a whole. And I think, and this is what Maha was just alluding to, what's fascinating to witness live as we speak is the institutionalization and policy that goes to reflect what's happening on the ground. As she mentioned with physical education, women have been participating in sports for several years, decades even. And now there are policies that are in place. The Royal Decree came out in 2014 to introduce physical education, but just now became implemented. So I think it's really fascinating to look at these incidents as progress, as opposed to why are Saudi women not driving. At the end of the day, Saudi women driving is something that the majority of the population is going to have to determine is ready to take on, and that can't be a top-down decision. Thank you, Fatimah. It's great to see at least 4 Saudi women driving this conversation. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Nathan King, Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us.